New reporting coming in on the fight over Judge Kavanaugh's nomination and big questions facing Republicans tonight. Is it time to cut bait? The second accuser speaking out to the New Yorker today with sexual misconduct claims from college. Kavanaugh denying this claim as well. Protests breaking out across Capitol Hill today. You're looking at that scene. Activists say Republicans must stop and change gears, but the most powerful Republican in the Senate still on offense today.
A smear campaign, pure and simple, aided and abetted by members of the United States Senate. It's despicable. Another orchestrated, last-minute hit on the nominee.
Senator Orrin Hatch ripping into what he now calls a, quote, Democratic smear campaign. Senator Lindsey Graham saying this over the weekend. This was, to be clear, before this second accuser came forward.
What am I supposed to do? Go ahead and ruin this guy's life based on an accusation unless there's something more? No, I'm not going to ruin Judge Kavanaugh's life over this.
Washington Post reporting that behind the scenes, Kavanaugh growing frustrated during prep sessions, getting peppered about, quote, drinking habits and even, yes, quote, sexual proclivities. Kavanaugh declining to even answer some questions. And now a new report coming in this hour. Senator Susan Collins, a pivotal swing vote for the Republicans, says publicly that she believes the second accuser should be afforded the opportunity to speak to the Senate under oath. Details TBD. With that breaking news, I'm joined by Lisa Lerer, political reporter for the New York Times, and Ruth Marcus, editorial page editor at the Washington Post, and a columnist who has warned that Republicans may ignore the lessons of Anita Hill at their own peril. Ruth, as we often do on these big news nights, I begin with this breaking news. Susan Collins is key. It would seem that her view, whether it's in public or private, is that the Thursday hearing as planned is insufficient, that it should not be a, quote, he said, she said, but must be, in what the Senate reviews, a he said, they said. Your view of that breaking story?
My view of that breaking story is, wow, that is a really significant development from Senator Collins. And I have to say, I think it's the right thing. What the Senate ought to do is to get at the truth. Time's not of the essence. Truth is of the essence. And if it would slow down just a bit, it would serve everybody well, including if he is as guilt-free, innocent of all of these accusations as he says that he is, Judge Kavanaugh. Let's slow down and hear from the two women. Let's hear any corroborating testimony or lack of corroborating testimony and give people a chance to make their own assessment of what's going on here. So either Judge Kavanaugh becomes Justice Kavanaugh and he's on the court without this terrible cloud over his head, or we don't confirm somebody who has done these things that he's accused of to the Supreme Court. That doesn't seem really complicated. I'm really glad that Senator Collins seems to get that point. A lot of her colleagues just seem to be more concerned about rushing pell-mell to confirmation and talking about smear campaigns.
Right, and you mentioned the word rush. Lisa, there doesn't need to be a rush if the focus is on the facts. And let me read a little bit of what Senator Collins said for your analysis as well. She said, quote, I believe the committee investigators should reach out to Ms. Ramirez to question her under oath about what she's alleging happened. Asked if that should happen Thursday in conjunction, she said no, because there hasn't even been an interview of her yet, and I think that needs to take place first. Do you think Susan Collins, a moderate swing vote, who we mentioned Gendra Lotterer, who happens to be a woman senator, is taking a very different view that the facts are more important than speed, in contrast to what we've showed tonight from Grassley, Hatch, and McConnell?
Oh, there's no question. Time is not of the essence unless you're in Republican leadership or in the White House. They, of course, want to push this nomination through as quickly as possible. Getting a conservative Supreme Court is the holy grail for McConnell. It's, as you all know, the culmination of decades of Republican activism. And they're worried that with the midterms encroaching ever closer, what are we, 43 days now, that dream is slipping away. So they're running out of time to put someone else in. I think, in fact, they have run out of time to really put somebody else in. So this is the horse they have, and they're determined to run with this and get him through the Senate. Now, statements like Collins are really important because, of course, if she doesn't support him, they can't get it through. We know that, it seems very likely that not a single Democrat will vote for Kavanaugh. We're not totally sure about that, but that certainly seems to be the way things are going. So that means that Collins' vote is crucial here, and she has a lot of power and a lot of sway over how this is handled going forward.
So, Ruth, briefly, and then I want to play you some sound. Do you think Collins is doing this publicly to telegraph to her Republican colleagues that they better act up or her vote may leave?
Oh, yes. Senator Collins is very good at telegraphing publicly what she wants. And let me give you my perspective on Senator Collins, which is I've been watching her very closely, as have all of us, through this whole process. She has not been itching for a reason at all to vote against Brett Kavanaugh. No. She has seemed to me to be inclined from the start to support him, to believe his assurances when he said that he understood Roe to be settled law, and to kind of take that to the bank, where I wouldn't really put my money quite as confidently as she would. So for her to say, whoa, let's slow down here, right, is very, very telling.
And so just briefly, because I want to get you on this news, Ruth, I'm only interrupting you to allow you more time.
I'm sorry.
Take a listen for your response on a different view from Kellyanne Conway.
Judge Kavanaugh has been willing to testify publicly to what he has said privately under oath from day one. He's now calling this a smear campaign. Indeed, this is starting to feel like a vast left-wing conspiracy.
Ruth?
Well, I was around for the vast right-wing conspiracy, and I think it's really telling the shift in tone and emphasis and argument from Kellyanne Conway and everybody else. Kellyanne Conway led the pack, and I thought very smartly at the start of this when she talked about how Dr. Ford needed to be heard and her story needed to be understood, and then we could move on from here. We've moved from Dr. Ford should be heard to Democratic orchestrated smear campaign, and I think that's a very telling shift. It's a shift that really intensified after we moved from one accuser to two accusers.
Right.
And I think it underscores the real worry that Republicans are feeling right now.
Right, that he may be marching on TV, Judge Kavanaugh, tonight, because they're worried he may not make it till Thursday. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.